Have you ever felt that there's something ancient, dark, watching humanity through the cracks of time? Like a presence that never truly left us? When I was a child, I had a dream I could never forget. I was running, out of breath, trying to escape a gigantic shadow, a creature so colossal it crossed mountains with a single step. At the time, it was just a nightmare. But years later, when I read Genesis 6, that dream stopped feeling like just a childish fantasy. The text said there were giants on the earth, and that they were here in those days, and also afterward. Wait, afterward? After what? The flood? Who were these so-called sons of God? And why is this story almost never told in pulpits, Bible schools, or even traditional theological studies? Today, we're going to explore one of the most hidden and, at the same time, dangerously current mysteries of the Scriptures. Because what happened in Genesis 6 might be repeating itself in laboratories, on screens, in systems. And maybe the biggest mistake isn't believing the Nephilim existed, but thinking they disappeared. This is the boldest interpretation, and curiously, the oldest too. What if the Nephilim were already on Earth before the fall of the angels? As hybrid beings from a previous era, a remnant of something even older than Genesis 6 reveals? Just as there are debates about the origin of evil, whether it is literal, psychological, or spiritual, there is also this impasse about the Nephilim. But one thing is certain, something disturbing was spreading across the earth, and what came after was even more extreme. The book of Enoch and the letter of Jude 6 point to angels who abandoned their post and crossed boundaries. Imagine this not as mythology, but as a collapse between dimensions. As if celestial forces decided to interfere in the physical world, and the result was disastrous. Since ancient times, questions remain. Who were the Nephilim? Fallen angels who joined with human women and produced a hybrid lineage of giants? On the other hand, some see the Genesis account as a moral metaphor. In this view, the sons of God would be the descendants of Seth, a righteous lineage, who mingled with the daughters of Cain, representing corruption. It would then be a spiritual denunciation, not a literal one, a way to show what happens when light mixes with darkness. But this explanation, although safe, seems too timid given the weight of the biblical text. Something there pulses with a strangeness that this interpretation cannot contain. And there is still a third possibility, and this one haunts the most attentive. Genesis 6-5 makes it clear, the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. But what exactly caused such deep corruption? An intriguing theory states that the flood was not just a moral punishment, but a kind of genetic and spiritual reset. The result? The earth was filled with violence and anomalous beings. How many times does someone inherit an emotional pattern and only realize it years later when life begins to crumble? The same applies spiritually. Letting in what shouldn't be allowed can generate giants that control your life. Whether addictions, fears, traumas, or ancestral wounds, all this can grow silently until God decides to intervene with a redemptive flood. If you don't destroy it fully, it comes back, and bigger. The flood you experienced was real, but maybe it didn't reach every area. And what remained hidden in the basement of the soul can, one day, become a new giant. That's why the Bible is not just about ancient stories. It's a mirror. And maybe the story of the Nephilim isn't about what was, but about what still needs to be faced within us. But does every flood destroy? Or do some come to free? David really faced a nearly 3-meter tall being, an experienced warrior since youth. David's weapon? A stone? It seems disproportionate, and that's exactly where the lesson lies. It's not just about courage, but about trusting in a power beyond logic. And in real life, sometimes the giant is fear, trauma, doubt, but the right stone can bring any of them down. It is not very different from what we see today. Technology is promising to improve man, but that may be corrupting his essence. But then Numbers 13:33 throws cold water on that idea. There we saw the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers. Wait a minute, weren't they supposed to be gone? This raised several theories. Did some survive? Or did the giants' lineage reappear another way? One of the most debated ideas is that the lineage of Ham, Noah's son, carried something more than just rebellion. The point is, when something strange enters our lineage, emotional, spiritual, or even familial, the fruit of that can become a giant hard to control later on. As if creation had been contaminated by something that distorted not only the soul, but the very human body. A kind of invisible contamination that disfigured everything pure. This view is reinforced by books like Enoch, which suggest that the fallen angels taught humanity dangerous secrets, magic, war, manipulation of nature. It's like a poorly planted seed. You don't see the problem at first, but when it sprouts, it has already taken over. Many believe the flood wiped everything out. Ham had a son named Canaan, from whom came peoples like the Emmons, Rephaim, and the feared Anakim. Coincidence? Maybe, but some scholars believe this lineage kept alive the corruption from before the flood. The name Nimrod, for example, appears as the first mighty one on earth, a figure surrounded by mystery. Then we have Goliath, the Philistine giant, Og, king of Bashan, whose bed was over 4 meters long. All this echoes an uncomfortable truth. What was not completely destroyed reappears. It's like that sin you think you've defeated, but was only sleeping. When we hear about David and Goliath, many see it as a motivational fable. But what if it's more than that? Joshua also faced giants when entering the promised land. The Anakim were still there, firm and intimidating. But God had given a promise, and Joshua obeyed. I tried to control it, hide it, ignore it, until one day I faced it. It wasn't with a sword, but with prayer, therapy, discipline, and faith. Stonehenge with perfectly aligned blocks. The pyramids, which still challenge conventional explanations. Who built them? How did they move those with rudimentary technology? Like a song played in many versions, but with the same dark melody underneath. Now, think with me. What was happening in Noah's days? We are trying to recreate life, defy biological limits, playing gods. Just changed form? No longer flesh giants, but systems, ideologies, technologies that distort what is human. Evil has a way of disguising itself, changing skins, but the spirit behind it is the same. And it is precisely the spirit that needs to be discerned. Because while the world seeks power, performance, and perfection, something ancient may be returning, and the battle ahead will not be ordinary. And the parallel with fallen angels is inevitable. They also taught secrets that humans weren't ready to carry. The difference is that now, we are the bearers of the forbidden fruit, and the results are already appearing, though few are ready to see. Corruption, violence, and the presence of the Nephilim. Was he talking only about human behavior? Or was he pointing to something deeper, a literal repetition of ancient patterns? The letter of Jude 6 speaks of imprisoned angels awaiting judgment. But what if not all were imprisoned? Or worse, what if there are modern ways to open the doors again? The world is full of clues, but only those willing to question see them. And maybe the right question is not, did this happen? But why do so many try to hide that it did? Because when you connect the dots, you start to see a pattern. And this pattern leads to an even more unsettling question. Some archaeologists dodge with terms like archaeological mystery, but the Bible and other ancient traditions suggest another possibility. Hybrid beings with supernatural strength and knowledge. Little by little, the giant fell. And maybe that's what the Bible is trying to show us. Giants exist, yes, but they were made to fall. Only they don't fall alone. They need to be confronted with faith, with action, with persistence. And the next giant is already waiting. This part teaches a powerful lesson. Obedience can open paths where strength cannot. The Greeks had the Titans, the Norse, the Jotnar. Indigenous peoples speak of enormous men who walked through the forest. Coincidence? Hard to believe. These are cultures separated by oceans, languages, and centuries, but with incredibly similar stories. This points to something beyond folklore, an echo of a forgotten or camouflaged truth. And when the same myth repeats in so many places, it ceases to be just a myth. How many times does someone retreat before an obstacle because it seems too big? But what God expects is action, not excuses. The courage that brings down giants starts with the decision not to turn back, even when afraid. In my life, for example, my Goliath was called anxiety. It seemed invincible. If you think giants are exclusive to the Bible, maybe you need to take a trip around the world. Now, look at the megaliths. Baalbek in Lebanon, with stones weighing 800 tons. It's as if each civilization was trying to tell the same story, but with different accents. Jesus said that, in the last days, everything would be like the days of Noah. Today, we have frightening advances. Genetic manipulation, DNA engineering, cloning, artificial intelligence with almost human consciousness. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe the Nephilim never left? In the end, this whole story about giants is not just about buried bones or ancient legends. It's about what is happening inside you. The real battle was never just physical, but spiritual. Nephilim represent forces that want to dominate, control, intimidate, and all of us, at some point in life, have to face something like that. And the curious thing is that often the giant that scares us the most doesn't even have a name. It is a guilt, a wound, a lie we believed for too long. But here is the truth almost nobody tells you. You don't have to be big to win. David was small, without armor, without prestige. What did he have? A heart aligned with God, and that was enough. I have known people who fought deep traumas, stories of abandonment, identity crisis, and won, sometimes with prayer, others with professional help, in all with faith, because no giant resists a spirit that refuses to bow before fear. And if everything you've heard so far is more than a theory, if it has a call, or maybe they're more hidden, disguised as routine, apparent success, or automatic smiles. An invitation for you to stop running, stop accepting to live under the rule of these giants. With God, even the smallest stone has the power to bring down the largest wall. But this war starts inside you. And once you take up this battle, you begin to see the whole world with new eyes. Now answer me honestly. What are the giants in your life? Do they have names? Anxiety, fear, rejection, loneliness, addictions, traumas? Either way, you know they're there, lurking, trying to dominate the territory of your heart. But God calls you to a different posture. Isaiah 8:12-13 says, "Do not call conspiracy what this people calls conspiracy, and do not fear what they fear, nor be dismayed. Sanctify the Lord of hosts himself." In other words, while the world lives distracted by fabricated narratives, God is inviting you to see the spiritual reality behind appearances. With faith, courage, and holiness, you not only face the giants, you bring them down. And sometimes, all you need is a stone, a decision, an attitude, a prayer made with faith. If it opened your eyes to a reality you already felt but couldn't explain, then subscribe now and turn on the notification bell. If this video touched you, that way you won't miss what's coming next, because the journey is just beginning. And in the next video, we will dive even deeper. You will understand how ancient spiritual forces might be manipulating the greatest structures of the modern world, from genetics to technology, from religion to entertainment. Yes, what started in Genesis 6 is still in motion. The question is, will you ignore it, or will you awaken?